Welcome back to Play by Pod. If you're a fan of these sorts of podcasts, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. My name's Chris Yean, joined by Daniel Viles. Now, one of the key things we're going to sort of try and look at is a piece of commentary. Obviously, we can't share it, but describing a piece of commentary that we're a big fan of, that something we learned from. And going back and watching this piece of audio now, I've learned a lot from you because of that. And one of the key things, so this key piece is it's Bruce McAvaney's call of the Cathy Freeman's run in the 2000 Olympics, where she ran through and won the 400 meters. As Cathy was crossing the finish line, he goes, "This is a famous victory, a magnificent performance. What a legend, what a champion." And then he let the moment breathe. Now, talk to us about what makes that a good piece of commentary for any sports broadcaster.
First of all, he didn't try to fight the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned the silence at the end of the race. What was equally impressive was his silence at the beginning of the race. The clip you normally get has just the race there, but he would have been talking for a good 3 and 4 minutes before that as all the runners get introduced, and he had all the biographical information. But because the stadium was so noisy that night, and I know that because I was there, it is literally when Cathy went across the finish line, it is the loudest noise I've ever heard in my life.
So you were there?
Never heard anything. Yeah. I was I was on ground level, and I was level with the beginning of the 100-meter straight. So when the runners came round into the straight, Cathy had just taken the lead from Lorraine Graham and Catherine Merry. So I could see that she was going to win. Mm-hmm. I was also clinically depressed at the time, so I wasn't really feeling anything. It was just this kind of, what the on earth is going on here? So different story. But with that, so Bruce picks up the race as it comes in. It's not 100 meters, it's 400 meters. So his speed is very measured as they're coming around. He realizes that whereas with most races, you call it a bit more like a horse race where you talk about all 8 runners, with this one, the story was so Cathy-centric. And it took me a while to realize that wasn't just an Australian thing. People in Britain and America know about Cathy Freeman's race and what it meant at the Sydney Olympics. The whole world really was focused on this. And I think apart from direct relatives of Lorraine Graham and Catherine Merry and a few others, there was a real push for Cathy to win this. People around the world knew what it meant. And so Bruce had the luxury of being able to focus on that story and talk about where she was in relation to the other runners. The other impressive thing is at the end, and you just quoted the things he said because from the last 20 meters, it was clear that, okay, she's got the race won now. The time for analysis of the race would come. Mm-hmm. There was going to be a massive, lap of honor. She was going to be on the track for another 10 minutes after the race. I forget who the co-commentator was. It might have been Tamsin Lewis or someone like that. I can't quite remember. But they would have a lot of time at the end to talk about the minutiae of the race and when a runner made their move. But that last 20 meters she was crossing the line, that was for emotion. That was for big statements. This was a big moment that deserved big statements. I think 3 lines would have been enough. I think What a Magnificent Performance was a little bit weak in that, but this is a famous victory. And then just a couple of what-a sentences.
Yep.
Absolutely perfectly got that. And Bruce McAvaney, I mean, he's not my absolute favorite commentator, but the thing I love most about him is that he never lost touch with that boy in the backyard inside him. He just always turned up with a how cool is this tone in his voice. He was even doing that at the Women's World Cup last year. He wasn't doing play-by-play commentary, but he was part of the presentation side, and he still had that how cool is this tone in his voice, and I love that about him.
I think with this piece of commentary too, and I love the analysis that you've given there, is that the silence that he's left at the end and he sort of spaced out and said very little. You were there in the crowd. You felt the experience of what it was like when Cathy crossed that finishing line and she won gold. The euphoria that you feel in the venue. And I think going back and watching this clip is that Bruce wanted to make you feel that you were there too, with the millions watching across the country. Is that, I imagine the tech production team they would have ramped up the effects mic and just had the roar of the crowd. And you sitting there on TV, I mean, where were you when Cathy Freeman won that race? It's one of those things you simply don't forget, regardless of your age. I was 12 years old, and you don't forget that. But you're sitting there and you're like, yeah, I'm being overcome and overwhelmed by this special moment. But if you've got someone comes in over the top of that moment and just rattles off, I think that takes away from it. So whether you're on TV or whether you're in the stands, you're feeling the same thanks to Bruce's little piece of commentary there.
And as soon as a commentator says, what a lot of them say in that situation is, oh, listen to the crowd, or the crowd has gone off. The only thing stopping us from listening to the crowd is you.
Yes.
Shut up, and we will do the thing you just asked us to do.
And that's something you've sort of taught me over the journey, is letting the moments breathe. I've had journeys when I've been made aware of that. I've called with people who get caught up in the moment, as we all do, who come in over the top of that, and I think that sort of takes away from it a little bit. But having heard it now and heard how it shouldn't sound, and even with other calls in general, other people sort of come in other calls, now that I know that you just got to let those big moments breathe a little bit at the end, particularly even when it comes to radio calling. I think if you've got the effects mic up and the crowd is singing their bit, then you just let that moment ride. How long do you reckon? 5-10 seconds or something?
With that one, you can let it go longer. Now, most moments are not that big and that sustained. So the most recent clip I've watched, 10 seconds there, but I have a feeling you let it go for a bit longer. Maybe the next time he spoke might have been when Cathy slumps on the track and she does unzips and takes the hood off, and then there's something more to say, because then you see what her face looks like. And I think he was excused there for just saying the relief. It wasn't excitement, it wasn't triumph, it was thank God that's over. And apparently Ian Thorpe and Cathy Freeman have talked with each other, and they both said, yep, that was pretty much it. When we felt it was just like, oh, thank goodness, no one's going to ask me about this again. I've had to come from with my own calling, where most of us, apart from if you've got some seriously good connections, the first time we commentate is not in front of a crowd of 5,000, never mind 110,000. And so I had to come from the other way, where I'd sort of got in my mind, okay, don't over-commentate big moments. You've got to let them breathe. But when you're at a game where the number of spectators is 2 people and a dog, or at the very least where everyone watching the game has a direct relationship to everyone in the game, and quite often if you've got one effects mic in front of the comm box and the crowd's on the other side of the ground, then you have to make that moment bigger. And so that was one of the big things I learned in my first year, was that how you commentate a big moment in the context of the match depends on who else is in the orchestra. If you have no, instruments around you, then you've got to do all of the music. Whereas on that occasion, Bruce was surrounded by, a massed choir. And so he thought, well, this does not need a solo over the top. And so I'm still working out when at the moment we're doing AFLW games and the crowds are about 3,000. Now that's significant. But with our equipment, we can't capture all of that. And I'm still trying to work out, okay, how do I balance that? So if the sound needs to be this big, how much of that's being provided by the crowd, and then how much do I need to add? And so that's something that I'm working on at the moment, trying to work out, okay, how big do I need to go to make this moment the right size?